All right, here we are on Monday for our A Dark Inheritance library reading for our audiobook. We've listened to chapter 1, 2. Today is 3. I know that some of you are saying it's pretty good. So if you did not get a chance to listen to some of the chapters, scroll back through your specials channel to find the library posts from Mrs. Edwards. All right, I'm going to get it up and running for us. And we're going to just get started here. We'll probably listen to chapter 3 and 4. Okay, so here we go.
3. Flute. Mr. Hambleton was reading what sounded like a poem, something to do with the sea, bizarrely. He raised his voice to quash the swell of catcalls that greeted my entrance, and gestured to my seat without pausing to ask for an explanation. I looked over my shoulder at Freya's desk. Empty. I felt sick. Thought she'd got you? I glanced sideways at the class clown, Ryan Garvey. He pulled his collar away from his neck and placed 2 fingers where the bite holes ought to go. That piece of pantomime somehow escaped Mr. Hambleton's attention, but the tongue-lolling death rasp that followed it didn't. Thank you, Ryan. Garvey snapped to attention. What for, sir? For volunteering to explain the metaphorical significance of that final stanza. The what? The class erupted with laughter. Mr. Hambleton walked down the room and placed the open book on Ryan's desk. Forgive me. I seem to have mistaken your display for an artistic interpretation of the hungry sea. Clearly I was wrong. So, perhaps you'd like to copy the poem out in full and present me with your real thoughts during recess. He tapped the page. Sir? That's not an invitation, that's an order, Ryan. Mr. Malone, he said, turning to me, how good of you to join us. I take it there's a reason for your delayed engagement. I explained about the flooding. Well, I got here on time, Lauren Shenton said. She lived on the next road over from me. Mr. Hambleton's face said she'd made a fair point. Several kids had come through the center of Holton where the main had burst. We took the coast road, I said, fidgeting a little. We were stopped by the police. How exciting, Mr. Hambleton said, raising his hand to quell the tide of comments. I never had you down as a villain, Michael. Nothing serious, I hope? I shrugged. They would find out soon enough. Well, you're here, that's all that matters. Right. Sir? He was about to go striding back to the front. Yes, Michael? Where's Freya? Avoiding sunlight, someone muttered. Mr. Hambleton let the taunt pass. I believe Freya called in this morning to say she was taking care of her father, who's been ill. Bet she staked him, someone else said. And even though the logic didn't really add up, the class collapsed in laughter again. That's enough! Mr. Hambleton had reached his limit. He glared at the big mouths and troublemakers. I have it on good authority that Freya went through a difficult, life-threatening operation when she was younger. She came to Holton with her father to make a new start. If I hear one more slur about vampires or crows or staking of hearts, I will make all of you read Bram Stoker's Dracula and then require an essay from each of you on the moral agenda that underpins the general story arc. Is that clear? Yes, sir, we said, like terrified rabbits. Lauren Shenton flapped a hand in the air. Yes, Lauren, what now? Sir, no one really wants to diss Freya, but you know she won't get involved. It's like she doesn't want to make friends with us. Like she's scared of people or something. Then you must be patient and give her time. And she talks to herself, someone said. She's freaky. Her face is weird, Ryan muttered. You should talk, Thorin said. No, it is, though, Ryan countered. She kind of changes, don't you think? Several kids nodded, and someone else said, and she's always drawing stupid dragons. That's like something you do when you're 9. In the whirl of Mr. Hambleton's exasperation, I managed to interject a meaningful question. Sir, what operation did Freya have? The other kids looked at me as if I'd defected to a foreign power. Why the sudden interest in Freya Zielinski? Mr. Hambleton took a moment to think. I'm not sure I'm at liberty to discuss that, Michael. Right, let's get on. Notebooks open, please. I swung my school bag onto my desk, giving Ryan enough cover to pass me a note. Blood transfusion, it said. What? I mouthed. Freya's operation, he mouthed right back. I wadded up the paper and threw it at his big, dense skull. Somewhere up the road, I swear there's a village missing its idiot. The rest of that day passed without incident. Although my thoughts were still jumbled by the morning's events, school went on as normal around me, and no announcement came about Freya. Maybe she hadn't been at Berryhead at all, and someone else had been walking her dog. But as far as I knew, Freya lived alone with her father, who was sick. So what was the husky doing up there? And something else didn't compute. Later that day, I was passing the gym when I looked in and saw Josie behind a music stand practicing the flute. I watched for a minute, impressed by the way she moved her head to the flight of the music without ever shifting her gaze from the score. Eventually, Mrs. McNeese, her music teacher, opened the door a crack and asked if I needed to speak to my sister. I shook my head but asked, Ma'am, is Josie good at flute? She looked at me as if I'd swapped my brain for a sock. Yes, of course she is. She's a wonderful prospect. She's at the level of a child much older than her years. But surely you knew that already. I nodded and got around it by saying that me and Mom just wanted to know how likely it was that Josie would get through her exam next week. Well, I'm not a betting person, but I'd say she's a certainty. Are you all right, Michael? You look as if the world's just folded in around you. Pretty good description. Maybe it had. I'm fine, ma'am, I said, retreating into a stream of passing kids. I waved at Josie, who saw me and frowned, but didn't stop playing. Mrs. McNeese sighed and closed the door. And that was that. Josie played the flute and played it well. And with every note that followed me down the corridor, the more my mind began to accept it. Until, by the end of school that day, I was certain I'd known it all along. Josie had played since she was 6 years old. She had an ear for music, a precocious talent. Why was I even asking the question? Chapter 4. Scooter. The following morning, outside the school gates, everything I knew about my life began to change. Within moments of being dropped off by Mom, the heckling began. Hey, Flash, show us your laser-powered feet! Did they send you for a dope test afterward or what? Why didn't you keep going right over the cliff and making an even bigger splash, eh, hero? What are they going on about? Josie tutted, as kids began to crowd around and jostle us. Suddenly, Ryan burst to the front of the mob, thrusting a rolled-up notebook in my face, like it was a TV reporter's microphone. Mr. Malone, Ryan Garvey, BBC News. Have you anything more to tell us about your dramatic cliff-top rescue? Thrilling cliff-top rescue? Get it right, someone said. Then I saw the newspaper. Josie snatched it out of Freddie Hancock's hands. Michael, look, she said, passing the paper to me. There's a picture and everything. Underneath a headline that said, Heroic Boy Rescues Dog, was a picture of me standing on Berry Head with a husky in my arms. "No, it didn't happen like that," I said. Ryan Garvey aimed his microphone again. "How did it happen, Michael? What was going through your mind when you grabbed the dog? Was it anything to do with how many cans of dog food you'd get as a reward?" Laughter. I thrust the paper back at them and knocked Ryan's notebook out of my face. "The pictures are fake." Now I knew why Eddie had made me pose with my arms held out. It would have been a simple matter to paste a picture of the dog across my chest, then superimpose it on an image of a rain-swept Berry Head. I wasn't even sure it was the same dog. And if that had been his intent all along, why had he bothered to take the images from Josie's phone? "This is boring. I'm going in," said Josie. She skipped away to be with her friends. Meanwhile, the mob was still giving me grief. There were more dumb jokes about bionic limbs and sled dog teams. "When's your next polar expedition, Michael?" Then Ryan said something that stopped me in my tracks. "Where did you hide the body, Malone?" The power of my stare actually made him back away. "They found someone?" I asked. Then everyone was clustering around, wanting to tell me that I'd wasted my time. No, the police hadn't found a body on the rocks. Just the dog wandering close to the cliff, with no apparent reason for its show of distress. There had been no jumper on Berry Head that day. It was a false alarm. Loser. But that didn't stop the idiot Garvey saying, "Open his bag, maybe he's got Freya's heart in there." I'm not a violent kid, but I was so going to stuff Ryan's head down a drain when a voice said, "Mikel, I need to speak with you." Maybe it was because it was a female voice, or the haunting measure of authority it carried. Or perhaps it was the way she said Mikel, not Michael, that made 9 rowdy schoolboys turn as one animal. "Wow," Ryan Garvey whistled. For once, Mastermind spoke for us all. She was across the road, leaning against a shining red scooter as slim and perfect in its breathtaking design as she was. Springs and brake hubs glinted in the sunlight. The mirrors stood up like 2 glass flags. The seat was so shiny and black that it looked, for all the world, like she'd only just torn off the shrink wrap. Stunning. And so was she. She must have been 19, maybe older. I'd have guessed she was French even if I hadn't heard her speak. Spikes of short, dark hair stabbed at the ridges of her prominent cheekbones. Her eyes were caramel brown and seemed to swirl at their center like the milky foam on a cappuccino. She was wearing a plain white dress, and on her feet were a pair of blue and white sneakers, their laces looped like butterfly wings. I had never really understood love at first sight. That day, I totally got it. She held out a helmet. "Oh my God! Who is she?" Ryan hissed. It took a few moments to find an answer. Under her riveting gaze, my mouth just didn't want to work anymore. A sudden crosswind picked up Garvey's notebook, blew it 10 yards down the road, but even that couldn't shift his focus from the girl. Then, for no reason I could possibly imagine, other than that the words were just there in my head, I heard myself saying, "She's..." Another half second ticked by. The French girl gave me a nod of approval, as if she wanted me to speak my mind, no matter how weird the words might sound. And they were weird. "She's the au pair." "What?" said half a dozen guys at once. She smiled like an early dawning light. Ryan Garvey, BBC News, jabbed a finger in the girl's direction. "She seriously lives with you? She does things, washes your boxers and stuff." It sounded credible. A French au pair. Everyone knew we weren't short of money. So no one laughed. And the girl just stared. High in my skull, a school bell rang. Almost immediately, she spoke again, guiding her gaze even deeper into mine, as if I were the toy she'd singled out and needed to grab from the arcade booth. Mikkel, we have to go. I looked dizzily at the helmet she was holding out to me. Black with a purple floral design. The patterns were wandering all over the dome. Someone spat on the ground and said, "Come on, Malone, stop messing around." But I couldn't help myself. I stepped toward the girl and took the helmet. She jumped on the scooter and sat astride it. "Get on. Hold my waist, okay?" A small piece of me was crying, "Danger, danger!" But I swung my leg across the seat, laying my hands just above her hips. Despite her slender frame, her muscles felt taut and firm like an athlete's. "Where are you taking me?" "That won't matter till we get there. Hold tight." She kicked away the stand. "What? What's he doing?" Garvey screeched. "Hambleton is gonna go nuts!" But the wind was already in my face, and school now seemed a tame alternative. We sped away, mocking the lines of traffic, and headed off into the flickering sunlight. I had no idea what was waiting for me. All I could think about was holding the girl and breathing her scent, which only seemed to add to her air of mystery. That, and the creature inked on her shoulder. Just below the blowing collar of her dress was a small tattoo. As we slowed for a traffic light, I let go with one hand and touched a finger against the design, feeling the shock of her smooth white skin. She parted her lips and looked back, but said nothing. I took my hand away as we picked up speed, thinking about the book I'd been reading, how the tattoos found on the Illustrated Man were still by day, but alive by night, foretelling grisly tales of death. What story did this creature tell? I wondered. Who was the girl with the rearing black unicorn on her shoulder?
Okay, that was chapter 3 and 4. So we're going to listen to chapter 5 next time. I want to know who this girl is. I'm not really sure who she is. Hopefully we'll be able to figure that out in the next chapter. I remember going back to like the first chapter or two, they were talking about the people in the trench coats that were trying to get him to join some kind of organization. And I remember from the synopsis, it says that Michael Malone discovered his supernatural ability to alter reality. He is recruited by an organization dedicating to investigating strange and paranormal phenomena. So I'm wondering if she has something to do with this organization. All right.